Today we will be discussing the guilty knowledge test, how it works, as well as the strengths and weaknesses. In the book, Forensic and Legal Psychology, a psychological science applied to law, Costanzo and Cross note that the guilty knowledge test, also known as the concealed information test, is an alternative to the relevant-irrelevant test, the control question test, and the positive control test. All of these are procedures for a polygraph test. A polygraph is a machine designed to measure physiological changes in order to detect lying. It is assumed that it is easier to remember the truth than to remember a lie. With this being said, it is believed that when people lie, their hearts beat faster, their breathing quickens, their blood pressure rises, and their skin moisture increases. The relevant-irrelevant test uses a non-arousing question that is not relevant to the investigation, followed by an arousing question that is also not relevant to the behavior being investigated, and then an arousing question that is relevant to the behavior being investigated. The control question test uses control questions that are about behaviors that are uncomfortable for the participant, such as, before age 21, did you ever do something dishonest or illegal? These questions are purposely broad so that anyone who answers no is assumed to be lying. The positive control test uses the relevant question as its own control. In other words, you would be asked the same question twice. The first time you would respond honestly, and the second time you would lie. This technique then allows for a direct comparison of the two questions. Now that we have discussed the different procedures for polygraphers to use, let's discuss the guilty knowledge test. So how does the guilty knowledge test work? The guilty knowledge test uses multiple choice questions with one relevant answer and various other answers. The first answer is an unscored buffer question, meaning that it is not counted because people are normally nervous and therefore tend to react more strongly when presented with the first answer. When giving the answers, it is important to pause between each one in order to allow the participant to think and react to each one. The point here is that a guilty person would recognize scenes and events from the crime that an innocent person would not. So now let's move on to scoring the guilty knowledge test. Since all 5 options will seem equally possible to the innocent subject, there is no reason for them to show arousal differences. When scoring the guilty knowledge test, it is assumed that anyone with a stronger response to the correct item in at least 6 out of 10 questions has knowledge of the crime. In an article titled "The Physiological Detection of Deception," William Wade and Martin Orne discuss an actual theft case in which a blue envelope containing a considerable amount of money disappeared. A subject who claimed not to have seen the envelope or know its color was asked if the missing envelope was brown, red, blue, yellow, or gray. The same question was then repeated. So in this picture, this top line measures respiration by placing a pneumatic tube around the rib cage, as seen in the picture up there. The middle line measures the electrodermal response by measuring the fingertips and how sweaty they are. You can see that in the picture too. And then this bottom line measures relative blood pressure by placing a cuff on the subject's bicep. As you can see, the results indicated that the electrodermal response was higher both times question 3, was the envelope blue, was asked, indicated here by the highest point. The subject was then confronted with these records and consequently admitted taking the money and returned it in the blue envelope. In a study conducted by Bradley and Redinger, 48 men volunteered to participate for course credit. The study included 3 groups: guilty, innocent aware, and innocent unaware. The guilty subjects were told to commit a mock crime in which they were told to shoot a mannequin, steal $15 from the victim, and then wrap the gun in a cloth. Both the innocent aware and innocent unaware groups were given a sheet that said they were murder suspects. The innocent aware group was then given the details of the crime, whereas the innocent unaware group received nothing further. The participants then waited 10 minutes before being called in to take a guilty knowledge test. The results indicated that the guilty subject scored a higher reaction on the skin resistance aspect of the test. Also, there was no significant difference between the memory of the guilty and the memory of the innocent aware groups. Furthermore, none of the innocent unaware participants were incorrectly identified by either the skin resistance scored alone or the combination of the 3, skin resistance, blood pressure, and respiration. Now that we know about this test, it is important to discuss how effective it is. On average, the guilty knowledge test correctly identifies 97% of innocent subjects and 76% of guilty subjects. This suggests that it is a much better procedure compared to the 3 previously mentioned tests because it is better at avoiding false positives. However, as we all know, no test is perfect. Some of the weaknesses to this test are that it requires a lot of crime facts from the crime scene and that a guilty person must remember the details. Also, the facts cannot be publicized until the subject has been questioned. Another weakness is that there is a potential for an eyewitness to know the same details about the crime. For example, in the aforementioned study, although they were not eyewitnesses, there was not a significant difference between the guilty group and the innocent aware group when it came to the memory of the crime details. So in conclusion, the guilty knowledge test is an alternative to the typical polygraph procedures. It is more effective in correctly identifying innocent and guilty subjects and should therefore be implemented more often.